The ANC is gearing up for the launch of its election manifesto tomorrow in Durban. As part of the celebration, the party is hosting a gala dinner tonight. It says the manifesto will respond to issues around corruption, crime and the struggling economy. The party says it's heard people's cries and will focus on addressing them. My co-anchor Vuyo Mvoko joins me from Durban tonight. Vuyo, good evening. Earlier we spoke to Samkele Maseko, who told us that straying a little away from tradition, this is not necessarily a fundraising dinner. So what are we expecting will happen here then?
Well, that's what Paul Mashatile, the ANC's Treasurer General, would have us believe, that tonight is not really about raising money, but more an opportunity to get leaders of the African National Congress to meet with influential people in society. But it is, as they formally call it, the manifesto preview dinner. Of course, inside here is the menu and all of that, but I'm not going to take you through what we're going to have this evening. I'll get straight to the issues. There's a context within which this particular dinner and of course the main occasion tomorrow, which is both the celebration of the ANC's 107th birthday, but also and perhaps more importantly the launch of the governing party's manifesto. And with me here is of course Karima Brown. We're going to have a quick conversation about the context within which everything is happening, Karima. Well, it does look quite impressive, the setting that is, and one wonders whether the ANC will indeed have the money to actually run this election, given how bankrupt they were in December.
I think that's an excellent question, because as we know, elections are very costly. In fact, the ANC was declared technically insolvent at its Nasrec conference. Not many months have passed, and they have to now face the toughest election that they have since the breakthrough in 1994. And if you look around the room here this evening, this is a very snazzy affair. So certainly the money must be coming from somewhere. And that's, of course, one of the big reform issues that are being campaigned about, that we need to know how political parties are funded, given the history of state capture. So I think that interview that you're going to have with Paul Mashatile later on is going to be very interesting, because it would be good to get an idea of what the ruling party's election budget is, and more importantly, who's funding them and where they're getting the money from.
Of course, they're launching tomorrow's election manifesto on the back of an ANC that's very divided at this stage. You still have the shadow of the immediate past president still looming large. What do you think is going to be the tone, of tomorrow's speech by the ANC president?
I think President Cyril Ramaphosa is someone that keeps his cards close to his chest. But the fact that they chose this evening to already give us a sneak preview of the manifesto is to prepare the people for what the ANC is offering. And I think what they're going to try and do is keep the infrastructure in this province as united as possible, because of course the ANC needs a machine to get seats, bums on seats, if you like. They need to get voters out to vote. And we know already that proxy parties are using President Jacob Zuma's name as a fodder for people joining the organization. So the ANC has to really walk a very tight rope between balancing the interests of the organization's infrastructure to win that campaign and the message that is in that manifesto. And if that message isn't going to talk about the economy, if it's not going to talk about the cleaning up of the state, dealing with corruption, dealing with education, dealing with the deep inequalities, then that message is obviously not going to land well. And of course, the list process, we know, is incomplete. The NEC must still sit and vet those names. So you can't go and knock on Gogo Dlamini's door and say we're going to clean up state-owned companies, but then you have Malusi Gigawa's name on the list. So I think what Cyril Ramaphosa is going to be doing is take this in stages. This elephant is going to be bitten, eaten one bite at a time. They're going to try and get through tomorrow without any serious embarrassment to the president. They're going to put on a united face. In fact, putting President Zuma on the stage, a few days ago, really ring-fenced him. He was meant to have a lecture. That lecture didn't take place. And of course, he hasn't tweeted in a while. We know that he's now on Twitter. He speaks directly to the organization's membership and whoever else wants to listen. So I think that was quite a tactical move on the part of Cyril Ramaphosa. But the reality is, Vuyo, that some of its members are going to leave for this African Transformational Organization. Jimmy Manye has already gone, Hlaudi Mutsoaneng. These are people that were in the inner circle of President Jacob Zuma's, coterie of people around him. So he is definitely linked to these pop-up parties that are coming. And I think they are trying to make a plan B in the event that the African National Congress doesn't get that important 50%, so that they can be kingmakers of sorts, particularly in the provinces, because we know, of course, that's where the patronage networks actually function.
But what do you think is going to be the strategy moving forward? In other words, beyond this point, because what is clear is that former President Jacob Zuma is keen to go out there and make his presence felt. But the question, I guess, is how he will be able to do that without disrupting things and essentially overshadowing Cyril Ramaphosa.
Well, Cyril Ramaphosa made it very clear. He said, I will be giving the former president tasks to do. And he said, I'm very fortunate because I've got two other presidents as well, Kgalema Motlanthe as well as Thabo Mbeki. And I think there the line has been drawn. Cyril Ramaphosa doesn't use harsh words, but there is a steel fist in that velvet glove of his. He did the same when President Zuma was going to be removed as president to not serve out his term. He said, we're not going to humiliate him. And everyone said, no, but why are you worried about all of this? It was couched, in very flowery language, but the purpose was clear. President Jacob Zuma is not going to be allowed to derail this election for the ANC. Too much hangs on it. The entire balance of power in the country hangs on it. And Cyril Ramaphosa is going to choose the people of South Africa over Jacob Zuma. What he has to do is find an adequate way to ring-fence him in such a way that he is not going to be able to say different things to different people. And I think by saying I am going to assign him tasks is probably the clearest warning that Cyril Ramaphosa has given to Jacob Zuma. You toe the party line or else. And remember, Jacob Zuma isn't in a strong position. He's a man who has to now pay for his own legal bills. He's going to have to go before the Zondo Commission of Inquiry, and he could very well face jail, either for the charges linked to corruption in the arms deal or for outsourcing his executive responsibility to the Guptas and to his family. So he's not in a strong position. He's in his backyard where the theatre of spectacle can play off. But I think Cyril Ramaphosa has essentially ring-fenced him and said to him in no uncertain terms that I will appoint you tasks to do on behalf of the party. And of course we know if he doesn't listen, he can possibly be brought before the Integrity Committee. He can also in fact be DC'd. One of the main problems in the ANC that they see as the worst thing to do is if you sow division. So he could possibly face those charges as well. So I think Ramaphosa has ring-fenced Zuma for now.
Yeah, that's right. We are going to leave it for now. Well, Kathy, the stage is indeed set. The doors were opened a short while ago to usher people in so that the proceedings can begin in earnest. They're scheduled to begin at 7 o'clock. It doesn't look like they will start on time, but of course the ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to give the keynote address to the dignitaries, the people who have bought all the tables we are seeing around us. For now, though, it's back to you in the studio.
All right, Vuyo. Let's leave it there for tonight. Vuyo Mvoko is out at that dinner in Durban, and of course, we'll have more updates throughout the evening.